What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 4040 Vision podcast. I'm your host, Khaled Abdallah, and I'm joined today by my fellow co-host, Salman Huck. And today's topic is the 2012 NBA lottery redraft. I don't know what possessed me to pick this year, but we just decided to dive in. We want to do a draft that was a little bit older. I think the last couple ones we've done like 2020, 2019, even 2014. So we're like, let's go a little further back in time. So the format is going to be, we're going to discuss the actual pick that was made by the team. Obviously in the NBA, some of the picks get traded right away, or they got traded a little bit later in the offseason. But we'll discuss that and try to cover our bases and try to make the pick for the team that actually got the player, not the team that made the pick, because the NBA likes to complicate things. But we'll start at the top with the first overall pick. And Salman's going to go first, and then I'll share my picks right after. I did not look at your picks, so all of your picks are going to be a surprise for me. I know you put it in the same sheet on our Google Doc, but I decided to just keep it a surprise, just to, see if I can, just mix things up a little bit. So first overall pick was Anthony Davis. So clearly the best player in this draft. He went to Kentucky, drafted by the then New Orleans Hornets, and of course he's now currently on the Mavericks. So who did you pick first overall for the, again, then New Orleans Hornets?
Yeah, it's Anthony Davis. I think he's probably the best player in this, easily the best player in the draft. Maybe it's close between the next 2-3 guys. But I mean, he has quite the resume, and he was clearly the best pick here. 10-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA. I think 4 times first team, 1-time second team. So he's 5-time All-NBA defensive team. He's career averages of 24/7, 10.7 rebounds, and 2.3 blocks. Clearly one of the most talented players here, especially when he's healthy. One of the most talented players in the NBA when healthy. And he got his ring right with the Lakers during that COVID run. So, not a real ring, but we'll still count it as a ring for him.
I was going to say that's a topic for a different podcast. I mean, Anthony Davis as well. It's kind of a no-brainer. The crazy thing about him is that you can say that despite all the accolades, it's possible you could say he's underachieved in his career because of the injuries and some of the other things, the long stretch in New Orleans where they didn't have much success. I don't think they won a playoff series the whole time there. Maybe one playoff series, I believe. They beat the Blazers in the first round at some point before the demanded a trade to LA. As much as I hate to admit it, he is probably the best two-way big man in the NBA. He's incredibly frustrating to play against, and I'm sure, or to root against. And I'm sure he's probably pretty frustrating to root for at times because he does have those games where he disappears. He does have those niggling injuries, and he's always seems to come out of the game, even if he's not seriously injured. He'll come out for a few minutes, then come back in. So, is it crazy to say that he's underachieved in his career?
No, I don't think so. I think he definitely could have done more, right? But he was stuck on some bad teams for a while, and then to only have one ring for him to show, and that during the COVID year, like especially with that stacked Lakers teams that they've had, like I definitely say he's kind of somewhat underachieved. Like he should have more rings for sure, and he should have like definitely more All NBA first teams, things like that. So definitely, I think he's sort of underachieved here.
Yeah, I need to fact check this, but I wonder how many he would still have. I mean, the first teams and awards he'd still have if that 75 game threshold was still in place, because there was a lot of years where he didn't reach that. But it doesn't really matter. We can always double check it. But
yeah.
He clear first overall pick, and now he gets to play with Cooper Flagg next year. So that's going to be a fun team next season. 2 Kentucky Wildcats went back-to-back, so after their national championship win. So I should have mentioned that. That was one of the big reasons that Anthony Davis did go number 1, was because he did lead the Wildcats to a national championship, one of the most hyped prospects in a long time. So second overall, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist went to the then Charlotte Bobcats, again out of Kentucky, small forward, drafted by the Bobcats, and is currently retired. Who did you have going number 2 here?
I went Damian Lillard. Definitely debated maybe Draymond here or Bradley Beal here. But I know the Bobcats had just drafted Kemba, but you can't pass on a future Hall of Famer like Damian Lillard, right? Damian Lillard was easily. You can? Okay, all right, we'll find out your pick here. But yeah, I mean, come on, man. Dame is 9-time All-Star, 7-time All-NBA. You know, I think one time he was first team, couple of years second team, couple of times third team. So clearly, there's a 7 year stretch where he's a top 15 player in the league. Um, and you know, he's a killer scorer, 25 points per game, 6.7 assists per game. These are kind of his career averages. Even 4.3 rebounds per game and 1 steal per game. So those are his career averages. I think he just kind of moves the needle a bit more for the Bobcats than Kemba Walker would have. And you could have traded Kemba Walker. You could have taken Damian Lillard, traded Kemba Walker for another piece, right? So I think Damian Lillard would have been the pick here for me. I think he's the second best player in this draft.
I don't disagree. I agree he is the second best player in this draft. Do think I was trying to go with like a dose of realism here that you just used a top pick on Kemba Walker, who was lights out in college, clutch player. He was, he was on Dame time in his own way, where he led UConn to the national championship as well. And it just didn't make sense to me that they would go back to back on two really small guards. Kemba is 6 foot if you're being generous. Dame is listed at 6'2". Again, if you're being generous, he's probably more like 6'1", maybe 6 foot flat. So I just think a backcourt with those two guys would be dynamite offensively, but they're just getting rolled on every play. There's no defensive resistance whatsoever. So that was the only reason I was like, it's too soon for them to move on from Kemba. So, and especially because he showed promise his rookie year, and he ended up being a pretty good player for the Hornets or the Bobcats, whatever you want to call them, for the time that he was there. So for that reason, I went with Draymond. I think he makes sense there. This is an organization that is still a losing organization. They don't have much of an identity. And no matter what you think of Draymond as a player, he is a culture changer and he's a culture setter. And I think we've gotten to this point in his career after, 10 plus years where he's in this weird place where he's like overrated when he's being used against the Steph Curry legacy argument, but he's also being underrated with, by fans, and they just don't really see the value that he brings to the team, which a lot of it is the intangibles and things that don't necessarily translate to the box score. So what do you think of my Draymond pick here?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I thought Draymond is closely the third best player. Him and Dame are pretty close, neck and neck. Like you could make an argument that Draymond might even be the second best, but definitely the third best player in this draft. And if you're looking at it from a fit perspective, yeah, like makes more sense to go Draymond.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he's enough to turn around a pretty poor excuse for a franchise, but it just, again, from a fit perspective, from a culture perspective, I mean, Dame is a culture changer too, don't get me wrong, but I think just from an on-court perspective, you're like, let me just go with Draymond and beef up the defense and build up this team. All right, the next pick here was Bradley Beal, a shooting guard out of Florida who's drafted third overall by the Washington Wizards, and he is currently on the Suns, though I don't think he's going to be on the Suns for much longer. We'll see how that goes. So who did you have the Wizards picking third here?
Yeah, I had them going Draymond here, right? Draymond, second round pick, really outplays that draft pick. He's easily one of the best defenders in the game, right? 4-time NBA champ, 4-time All Star. He's got 2 All NBAs. I think one second team, one third team. He's was Defensive Player of the Year in 2017. 9-time All Defensive Team. Five of those were first team, 4 of those second teams. He led the league in steals in 2017 when he won Defensive Player of the Year. But if you look at his scoring, he's below double digits for his career averages. But I mean, he makes it up, right? He's like almost 7 rebounds a game, almost 6 assists a game, 1.3 steals, 1 block. So I thought, you get Draymond here. The Wizards also have John Wall. So I wouldn't think, someone like Damian Lillard makes sense here on the Wizards. And maybe talk yourself staying with the pick, going Bradley Beal, but Draymond is clearly much better than Bradley Beal. He brings something to the table that the Wizards were severely lacking. A defensive minded player. So I mean, the fit's there, I think, with John Wall, and they just have to add a shooter around those two, and then they would have had a pretty good team, I think.
Yeah, for the same reasons that I think you said it was okay that or you wouldn't have gone with Damian Lillard here. I should say because of John Wall. I thought it would have been okay. I thought it would have been a better fit than Dame and Kemba, who are again two really small guards. John Wall is like 6'4". He's not a huge point guard, but he's on the bigger side for a point guard. So I think, I mean, we saw Portland, they had good success with Dame and CJ in the backcourt. CJ is not as small as Kemba. So I think it would have worked out. Bradley Beal obviously is a bigger player than Damian Lillard, still not really known for his defense or anything like that. So I couldn't pass up Dame. I skipped over him in Charlotte, didn't think he made sense there, but I think he would have made sense in Washington. I think they would have had a similar level of success. Like the John Wall, Bradley Beal era was known for like making the 6 seed, 7 seed always. They had one playoff series win, I think, in their tenure there. And I think it's gotten to the point with Bradley Beal where he's also become underrated. I think he's just not a good player anymore, but it's making people forget this long resume of being, 20, 25 points a game scorer and all that. And the dude's a bucket. And he maybe not anymore, but he was. But I think Damian Lillard would have been able to step into those same shoes. Pretty dynamic offensive backcourt with him and John Wall. Probably would have been a lot of fun. Not a title contender by any means, not a culture changer by any means, but it would have been a lot of fun to watch. So we kind of swapped picks here, but what do you think the ceiling is? Like, does it change having Dame over Bradley Beal on this team?
I think it kind of does because just because of how good Dame was. Like I know Beal was a bucket getter, but you could kind of interchange like John Wall and Damian Lillard, right? Like what I think the problem would have been shooting because John Wall can't shoot, and that the reason why I worked in Portland was because CJ McCollum could shoot, and they could he could play off ball. He wasn't really on ball point guard type, but John Wall was also very ball dominant. So I think it might not have worked out too well for John Wall's career, but what was his career? He didn't last too long, right? So he had too many
Maybe would have
injuries
taken
start
some of the
piling up.
miles off of him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe take some miles off him, and then maybe John Wall turns into more of a defender. Like he had the skill set to be a defender, he just never tried. So yeah, maybe. I think it could have worked. I think it could have worked because John Wall could have been. They both could have been the ball handlers, and John Wall could have defended the shooting guards, and Dame could have been on the point guards.
Yeah, I don't buy this whole there's only one ball thing anymore. I think it's been disproven a million times where we're like, oh, there's not enough, not enough possessions. There's only one ball. What are they going to do? They said that with KD. They said that with, any big trade where you get even like Chris Paul when he went to the Rockets. We're like, oh, James Harden's pretty ball dominant. And they were a game away from making the finals and maybe a Chris Paul hamstring away from making the finals. So I don't buy any of that. And I think that it would have worked out pretty well. But again, what the ceiling is probably close to what it was with Bradley Beal, but it still would have been fun to watch. Next, Dion Waiters, one of the most unintentionally hilarious players in NBA history, out of Syracuse, combo guard. He was picked fourth overall by the Cleveland Cavaliers, and he is not on any basketball team. I don't think at this point he's not officially retired either. So who did you have the Cavs picking fourth here?
Yeah, I mean, you gotta take Bradley Beal here, right? Like if you're looking for a bucket getter, and that's what Dion Waiters was supposed to be. Bradley Beal is a bucket getter. He's he's been an All NBA All Star 3 times. He's even made an All NBA team once. So I think you put that guy with Kyrie, and then LeBron comes over, and maybe LeBron wins maybe a few more titles with Bradley Beal on this team versus Dion Waiters maybe. So yeah, I think Beal bucket getter. Like people forget he was a baller back in the day, right? Like if you look at his career averages, he averaged 21.5 points per game, and this is considering his tenure with the Suns the last like 2 years
Yeah.
where he's like put up like maybe 10 points a game. So he was getting buckets. He could get assists, rebounds, steals. Like he was doing it. He wasn't elite on any of those things, but he was a guy that could be your secondary ball handler and score buckets, and that's what Bradley Beal was. And clearly, I think he's probably the fourth best player in this draft.
Yeah, I think the opinion on him soured pretty quickly in Phoenix, but I want to say at the time when they got him, it was like that's it. That's all they had to give up to get Bradley Beal, who is, like you said, a secondary ball handler, a great scoring option. He's just not that guy anymore, and that's fine. He's in his mid 30s. So I actually did not pick Bradley Beal here. I went with Chris Middleton, who is another second round pick. So I think this is going to be a bit of a theme in this draft. We talked about it before we hit record that this was not a great draft, but it was a great second round. The second round is chock full of talent. And I think as we go through, I don't know who you picked, but I can assume some of the guys that you have in your top 14 here. But yeah, I went with Chris Middleton. He's an NBA champion. He's had a lot of injuries in the past couple of years, and now he's on the Wizards, unfortunately. But he was a huge part of that Milwaukee run. Obviously good enough to be the second, maybe third best player. I think he was better than Drew Holiday in that title run. But capable of having huge games. That was probably the peak of his career, was around that run. Kobe-esque at times with his mid-range game and offensive game. He's a good defender, not a great defender. And I think him on this team, eventually when LeBron would come to town, would have made them even more formidable. They already had some good wings with J.R. Smith and Iman Shumpert, but still, I think he would have made more sense here than Bradley Beal and would have given them some more athleticism and stuff on the wing. What do you think?
I don't mind it, Khalid. I don't mind it. I like Chris Middleton. But I just feel like they want a guy who can score. They were going after
I
Dion
mean,
Waiters
Middleton
type.
can
Bradley
score.
Beal is Middleton can score. Yeah,
Middleton
yeah,
can
he's
score.
good. I liked him. But I feel like Middleton's window was a little bit smaller than Bradley Beal's. Like he had like a window of like
Yeah.
4 or 5 years where he was really good, and then he kind of fell off because of injuries and stuff like that. Where versus like Beal just more recently fell off.
Yeah, it also took him a little bit longer to get started.
Yeah,
I mean, he's a
for
second
sure.
round
Yeah.
pick, which is normal, right? You're not getting the same opportunities as I think he was 39 overall. So
Yep.
obviously you're not getting the same runway as somebody that went third or sixth or seventh or whatever, like Bradley Beal or Dion Waiters. All right, so we're varying quite a bit in our picks, which is nice. I think that's probably the benefit of this being not a great draft is there's just a lot of variance. It's not like there's 5 players that are better than everybody else. So fifth overall, the Sacramento Kings, who have a history of terrible lottery picks with yet another one. They draft power forward Thomas Robinson out of Kansas. He is currently playing basketball in Puerto Rico. I think with DeMarcus Cousins, even though DeMarcus got suspended recently. But yeah, he's playing in Puerto Rico. So who did you have the Kings picking fifth here? I think this is where the draft gets real stinky.
Yeah, it's starting to get that way, Khalid. But I took Chris Middleton here, so I wasn't far behind you on the Chris Middleton pick. I think it's funny because we just kind of flip flop guys here. Yeah, and I would have maybe considered Andre Drummond here, but the Kings have DeMarcus Cousins, so that's a really hard fit. Having two bigs that can't shoot like I mean Boogie could shoot, but like having two bigs like that is kind of hard, especially as the NBA starts gravitating towards faster pace, shooting threes, things like that. Middleton absolutely would have been a great fit here with the Kings, and gives them a second level scorer next to DeMarcus Cousins. I think they still have Tyreek Evans at this point, but
They do, sure do.
yeah, yeah. I think he was coming. Is he coming off like he's 3 years removed? But this is the time where he's about to just go right over the hill. So he
Yeah,
easily replaced Tyreek on that. Yeah.
shortly before he's included. I think he's in that the trade to New Orleans, or maybe he ends
New
up on New
Orleans,
Orleans. I
yeah,
forget exactly what
something like
happened.
that.
Before I give my pick, so I told you that I had met 2 of the players from this draft in very random circumstances. So this was in 2015 in Philadelphia when Thomas Robinson was on the Sixers. I met him at a movie theater on Columbus Boulevard on the east side of Philadelphia, a famous movie theater. I forget what movie we were watching. I don't think we were watching the same movie, but ran into him in the lobby. You see this 6'10" dude covered in tattoos, and you're like, I think you play basketball. So I just went up to him, said, "What's up?" I like looked him up real quick. I was like, I think this is Thomas Robinson. But I had to verify. Nice guy. Didn't take a picture with him or anything, but just gave him a dap and said, "Hey man, nice to meet you." Very nice guy. Had a very attractive girl with him, so good for him.
Yeah.
I ended up picking Bradley Beal here. So yeah, like you said, we swap picks. I think this would have gone really well with, again, DeMarcus Cousins. They had Tyreek Evans before his fall off. This was Isaiah Thomas's second year, coming into his second year. So all of a sudden you're looking at not quite a backcourt, but an offensive lineup of Boogie, Isaiah Thomas, Tyreek, and then you throw Bradley Beal in there, and you're like, all right. I think John Salmons would have been their starting power forward. Maybe not. Doesn't matter at this point. But again, the ceiling is not that much higher, but it would have been really fun. Again, Bradley Beal, a lot of people are down on him now, but early in his career, he was a bucket, and I think he would have been pretty exciting with the team that they had in Sacramento. All right, still the draft is still good. Well, maybe not with the guys that we have left, but at least the actual picks were still good. So Damian Lillard goes sixth overall out of Weber State. He goes sixth overall to the Blazers, and he is currently on the Bucks. Though I don't know how long it's going to take for him to play basketball again after tearing his Achilles in the recent playoffs. But he's obviously off the board for both of us. So who did you have the Blazers picking here?
Yeah, I ended up going Andre Drummond here. Surprisingly, I didn't realize Andre Drummond actually was had made an All NBA team one time in his career. Couple of All Stars, and he's led the NBA in rebounding. So I think the Blazers later in this draft also take like Myers Leonard, so who also was a lottery pick. So they're clearly looking for a big to put next to LaMarcus Aldridge, and I think Drummond kind of gives them that big that can defend the paint, rebound, all the things that LaMarcus Aldridge didn't want to do, even though he's big enough to do it. Drummond gets to do all that. If you look at Drummond's career averages, he's a double double guy. He's 12 and a half points per game and 12 rebounds per game. So 1.3 blocks and 1.3 steals. So pretty good player. I think you put him next to the LaMarcus Aldridge, and that becomes pretty interesting. But obviously, it was a combo of Dame and LaMarcus, and then CJ McCollum later that made the Blazers work. But that's another interesting piece there for the Blazers with Dame off the board.
I like the pick. I think it makes sense. I ended up going with Harrison Barnes. So Harrison Barnes went, I think, just the next pick to the Warriors. Uh, he's it's really hard to pin the guy down as like is or who is Harrison Barnes as an NBA player. Like he's been around for a long time. He's made a lot of money. He's been on a I think this is like his fifth team now. I think he's on the Spurs now, right? So this is his fifth or sixth team. He's bounced around. I feel like he had all the physical tools to be an all NBA player, but just never had the right mentality, never had like the killer instinct. I think he never progressed past like the uber athlete that he was when he first came in, which kind of sounds like a Jonathan Kaminga. Maybe I'm talking about the same guy here. But anyway, yeah, I went with Harrison Barnes. This team was pretty good offensively. Obviously, that you included Dame, but they had a lot of wings at the time. I think later in this draft, they also get Will Barton in the second round. But I think it would have made for a pretty athletic front court of Harrison Barnes, Nick Batum when he was still young, and LaMarcus Aldridge before he begged out and went to San Antonio. So I think Harrison Barnes does make sense here. He's not like a culture changer by any means, the same way Dame is. They still would have been looking for a point guard, but I think he makes sense from a fit perspective. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I like it. I can see it. I think we're gonna have another case of the flip flop picks here again. So let's go to the next pick.
Okay. All right. I think so too. So, speaking of Harrison Barnes, one of the most hyped college prospects in a very long time, Mr. Iowa, like all kinds of stuff, ends up going to North Carolina for a year. The Warriors famously tanked to try to get this pick, and I think it worked out pretty well. Two-time champ. Anyway, or one-time champ? You can, one time. Yes, one time. So Harrison Barnes out of North Carolina goes seventh overall to the Golden State Warriors. He's currently on the Spurs after stints with Dallas and Sacramento. I think I'm missing one more team in there. But who did you have our beloved Warriors picking seventh here?
I had him going Harrison Barnes. I had him keeping the pick, Holland. Like I think your pick's gonna be Drummond here because I do think the Warriors. I clearly remember in this draft the Warriors did actually were hoping that Drummond would fall to them, and that was the guy they were targeting. And it was like between Barnes and Drummond, and that was their pick. Like that's the two guys that they wanted. So I kind of Drummond was gone here for me. So I took Harrison Barnes. I mean, he fit well. He played well. I mean, the difference. I think the difference in his career is those 2016 finals, man. If you hit three shots, two shots, man, this is probably a different Harrison Barnes we're talking about right now, right? Maybe he's like a two-time, three-time champion. He's like Warrior
Yeah.
legend and blah blah blah, right? Like we're talking in that light versus like Harrison Barnes, super athletic dude, just bounced around the league. And I think that's John. Like we're literally looking at Jonathan Kaminga's career path. I feel like I feel like that's what Kaminga's career is going to be. He's going to be Harrison Barnes. Maybe and Harrison Barnes was, like Harrison Barnes coming in. You're right. He was super hyped. Like people were like, oh, he's like mini Kobe Light.
Yeah.
Like people are talking about him in that regard. Like he could be Kobe. And I was like, I don't see Kobe, but I'm like, if you guys see Kobe, athletically sure, but mentality wise, no, no way, no way. Harrison Barnes was never close. And like, I think that's like it's good career. He's 14 points per game kind of guy in his
Yeah.
career. So solid career, but nothing special, right? But you know, as you're gonna see, the talent drops off significantly. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's not on the board for me anymore. Again, uber athlete, great nickname, the Black Falcon. So it was a lot of fun seeing him catch lobs from Draymond and Iguodala and Steph. So he fit what the Warriors were looking for, but they were also looking for some size in this draft. They ended up drafting Festus Ezeli later in the first round. Obviously, famously drafted Draymond 35th overall. So they were looking for some size. And in my mock draft, or my redraft, I should say, I ended up going with Andre Drummond, like you said. The thing is with Drummond, it's like he has like all the makings of a great player. He's a great athlete. He's got a good touch around the basket. I mean, he's a great rebounder, decent enough defender, but I don't know what it is. Maybe maybe you could tell me, but there's just like something missing. It's like that last 10% or something, maybe 20%. I don't know. That's keeping him from being, or maybe it's just an era thing. Like I think about if Andre Drummond was drafted in 1999 or 2002 instead of 2012, I think he has a much different career. You think he has a much better career, or should maybe if he's drafted in 2025 in, where we're coming back to the too big era or whatever. All right, eighth overall, the Toronto Raptors selected shooting guard Terrence Ross out of Washington. He's currently retired. So who did you have the Raptors picking eighth here?
I went with Jay Crowder, another guy I think went in the second round of this draft. He's still playing. He's still in the NBA. He's a great role player. I think that's what the Raptors kind of needed here. Someone that could kind of, just be that backup guy behind Lowry and DeRozan. A guy who could just come in, play defense, score some buckets, shoot some shots, get some rebounds, do all those things. And that's what Jay
Yeah,
Crowder did,
three and
man.
D guy. Yeah.
3 and D guy, 3 and D guy. That's what Toronto needed. I don't think Terrence Ross moved the needle for them. I think maybe if they had Jay Crowder, maybe they get past the first round of the playoffs, which they were pretty much stuck in until Kawhi Leonard came along. So yeah, I think this would have been a good fit here for the Raptors.
He would have been the LeBron stopper because they kept losing to LeBron in the Eastern Conference semifinals, finals, whatever it was. And yeah, they basically got over the hump, like you said, when Kawhi came around. But I don't know if Jay Crowder moves the needle. I don't think my guy does either. But I went with Evan Fournier. We talked about this draft taking a pretty steep drop off, but I do think he does. He's not obviously the defender that Jay Crowder was or can be, but he is a pretty good 3-point shooter. He can spread the floor. He is an athletic wing. Would have provided some more athleticism. You think he's a slightly better player than Terrence Ross, who I do have, at some point in this top 14 here, which I think says a lot about the quality of this draft. But yeah, I mean, it's cool. Jay Crowder is another second rounder. I think there's going to be maybe 4 or 5 second rounders that end up making the leap into our lottery here. So yeah, I don't think either of these guys move the needle, but solid picks overall. Our guy Andre Drummond, who moved up a few spots in both of our drafts. So ninth overall, the Detroit Pistons select again Andre Drummond out of UConn. And he is currently on the 76ers. I've lost count of how many teams he's been on at this point. But again, just a guy maybe playing in the wrong era. But who did you have the Pistons picking here?
I took Evan Fournier over here. Yeah, I
We
think
just
they
keep
could have
flip
just used.
flopping. I'm
We
glad I
just
didn't
keep
look at
flip
your
flopping.
picks. Yeah, because that would have been
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
boring.
yeah, we just keep flip flopping here, man. Yeah, I like you said, right? He's a good shooter. He's a good 3-point shooter. I think if you look at one of his best seasons, he's almost a 20-point per game guy, like 18 and a half. So I think yeah, Pistons could have used some shooting. They needed this. And Evan Fournier brings that, shooting, some athleticism. Not a defender, but they needed shooting and they needed scoring, and that's what Evan Fournier gives them. Again, doesn't move the needle, but at least someone who could be like a future starter, maybe role player type guy as your team builds. But yeah, I think that was the pick here for the Pistons.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting pick at the time. I think they still had Greg Monroe, who is a pretty similar player. So I don't know why they doubled down on this on the center position, especially in this era. I ended up going with Jay Crowder. So again, we flip flop the picks. Everything you said about him, he is a above average 3-point shooter, above average defender. He's always been a tweener. He's a guy that's like not good enough to hang on one team for a long time, but good enough where he keeps getting contracts and he's going to be bouncing around, I think, the league for a while. But again, a good player, slightly better than average. Again, doesn't move the needle. here in Detroit. But I think it would have been a solid pick, especially considering some of the options that are left on the board. All right, 10th overall, the then New Orleans Hornets. So they get a couple picks in the top 10 here. I guess New Orleans from Minnesota via the Clippers. So again, the NBA just loves to make things very complicated when it comes to the draft. Austin Rivers, out of Duke, one of the most hyped high school prospects of all time. Doesn't quite live up to his billing, but he is currently retired after a pretty good career. He's been around the NBA, I think maybe 6 or 7 teams, maybe more. Who knows? But who did you have again, then New Orleans Hornets picking 10th overall?
All right. I went Deion Waiters here, actually. I took him. In the lottery. Yeah. I mean, I think Deion Waiters, where he was picked and what he was supposed to be at number 3 or whatever the Cavs had, or 4, I don't think that's what Deion Waiters was. I think here at 10, he's more of a role player guy. He comes off the bench. He just gives you that scoring punch, right? Like what we're seeing with Buddy Hield right now for the Warriors, right? He's that guy like comes off the bench, 6th, 7th guy, 8th guy off the bench. He's a scorer, and I think that's what he would have been here on the Hornets. Doesn't move the needle, but now you have Anthony Davis, Eric Gordon, I think was there, Ryan Anderson. These type of guys are there, so I think gives Deion Waiters some more time to develop. And I think he could have been pretty solid if he had given that time. But like if you look at his career average, he's still like a 13-point per game scorer. In one of his better seasons, he's like 16 points per game. So I think he could have just been a scorer off the bench type of dude, like what we see with Buddy Hield, and I think that would have been the perfect role for him.
Yeah, he's become kind of a meme, a little bit of a joke. He's just a guy that never stops shooting. No matter what. I think there was a quote, I don't know if it was him or not, but he said, I'd rather go 3 for 30 than 0 for 20 because it means I stopped shooting. Maybe I made that up. I don't remember. But I went in a different direction. I went with Will Barton. So he actually went 40th overall. So this is the 4th second round pick that made the leap up to the lottery. Guy that spent some time in Denver, was a pretty productive player on those competitive Nuggets teams. I don't believe he was on the championship team, but he was around, he's a good player on a contending team. Brings a lot of athleticism, similar to Jay Crowder. He's like a 3-and-D versatile guy that can guard multiple positions. It's going to hit some big shots in the corner. Again, not a huge contributor, but at this point in the draft, we're kind of looking for scraps. And I think Will Barton is like a better than average player who maybe in the right situation could have thrived even more. But I mean, you're not going to get a much better situation than playing with Nikola Jokic. But I am a fan of him personally. And I think he was, again, in a better than average player. All right, 11th overall, the Portland Trail Blazers picked Myers Leonard out of Illinois. He is currently retired. I believe he was last on the Miami Heat, and he had, I think he made an anti-Semitic comment or something on a live stream that prematurely maybe ended his career. But yeah, he is currently retired. So who did you have the Blazers picking 11th here?
Yeah, I had him going Will Barton.
I swear this was not planned. I made sure
this is not planned.
to not look
This is
at
not
your
planned.
picks.
Yeah, this is not planned for sure. I'm gonna laugh if you say your pick was Deion Waiters.
No,
So
it
yeah,
is not.
okay, all right. Yeah, I mean, like everything you said about Will Barton, right? He could score. He was a scorer. He was a good athlete, things like that. During his couple of peak years, he was like almost a 16-point per game guy. So I think, yeah, I mean, I think that's just a scorer. That's what Portland needed, right? And Will Barton was a scorer, and he could come off the bench and score for them. And Myers Leonard was clearly not the answer. He was not this 3-point shooting big man. Like I think people thought Myers Leonard was going to be like Miles Turner, and that was not the case. So yeah, I think Will Barton, again, you just find a guy who could possibly start for you and score for you, and that's really all you can ask for at this point, given the people that are left.
Yeah, I don't know why I always called him Leonard Myers. I felt like that just made more sense. I love a guy with 2 last names. There was one game, I don't remember exactly what year it was, but I think it was against Denver, where he went off for what felt like 50 points. He was just unconscious from 3. Do you remember that? Am I misremembering?
No, yeah. There was a game where he just got insanely hot and dropped like 40 to 50 points on. I think it was Denver. It could be someone else, but yeah.
That was, I think, the series when they beat Denver to make the conference finals, which was kind of premature for this team. They ended up losing to the Warriors. They probably got swept by the Warriors, but this is another guy that was like more promise than actual ability. So I went with Terrence Ross. I've wanted to double down on the wings, the athleticism. We didn't talk that much about Terrence Ross in the last slide, but he was just, there was something about him that I really liked as a player. I don't know what it was. I really liked him on the Magic. I felt like there was something that he brought to the table. I've always thought it was more of a situation thing for him. I was like, put this guy on a good team, put this guy on the Warriors, put him on the, then Cavs or the Rockets or whatever, and he's having a much different career. I think he just kind of just didn't thrive in Orlando because at the time they were just kind of a mediocre team. They didn't have young stars around him. But am I like delusional about the player that Terrence Ross was?
No, I think he had all the tools, right? It's kind of like the same thing with Andrew Wiggins, right? Like the guy has all the tools, and then he got put in the right situation. And 2022 Andrew Wiggins is like probably the best Andrew Wiggins you've ever seen. So I think
2022 Andrew Wiggins is a first team All NBA player. But
that's what I'm saying, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like he was insane. Like 2022 Andrew Wiggins was insane, right? And I think that's your point about Terrence Ross. Like you put Terrence Ross on the Warriors like in 2017. This is a guy that's getting buckets. He can just score at will. Like people aren't guarding him. He's a good shooter. He's a good athlete. He's got that bounce. Like a lot of what I see in Terrence Ross, I see in Andrew Wiggins, and one of the things I see like between those two guys similarly is like they were like T-Mac lights. Like that, I feel like that's what they were, T-Mac lights, but they never reached that potential.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm not crazy. At least you don't think I'm crazy. There's just something about him. Just another guy. I think that was like there's guys where a bad situation, quote unquote, like a green light situation is not good for them. And I feel like he had the green light in Orlando to freestyle, to freelance, and he didn't have a set role, which is, I think, a pretty common theme. You talked about 2022 Andrew Wiggins. We could talk about Aaron Gordon in Orlando before he came to Denver, where guys are just given like too much leeway, too much freedom because they're lottery picks and they're not put into a role that can maximize their abilities and their talents. So it's a shame on Terrence Ross. But I mean, I think in Portland, this was a good team, well-coached team. Terry Stotts is a good coach. I think he would have brought more out of him than whoever the hell the Magic were lining up out there at head coach for that stretch. So I think he would have had a better career in Portland. I'm glad we agree. All right. Number 12. So 12th overall, Jeremy Lamb, shooting guard out of UConn, gets drafted by the Rockets. Shortly after this, he is traded to OKC in the James Harden trade. He's currently retired, just retired this past offseason after a stint with the the Stockton Kings of the G League. I got a good story about Jeremy Lamb here as well, but tell me who you picked 12th overall.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons I was agreeing with you, Terrence Ross, because I took Terrence Ross here. I think maybe Houston's not the right situation, but if he gets put into that Oklahoma City trade and he gets to play with KD and Westbrook, that's a pretty good situation for Terrence Ross, where he's not he's probably the third or fourth or fifth guy on that team, right? And I think that's probably good for him, where he just has to score, and he sees a guy like KD doing scoring at all levels. He sees Westbrook scoring at all levels. That's just an element he adds to his game. He uses athleticism, and yeah, I think that's a much better spot for Terrence Ross than Orlando and Toronto, where he ended up. So I think elite score. Like I think he would have been an elite scorer on the OKC Thunder. Like I think he would have replaced a lot of Harden's volume that they missed in OKC. Like I think Terrence Ross could have done that. Yeah.
And they tried, right, with Kevin Martin and Jeremy Lamb. Didn't quite work out with them.
Yeah.
So again, before I give my pick, I will tell my Jeremy Lamb story. So he's the second player in this draft that I met in strange circumstances. So I was coming home from a business trip in the Sacramento airport, and him and the rest of the Stockton Kings, who, if folks don't know, the G League players, they fly Southwest generally, or they fly commercial at the very least. They're definitely not flying on the private plane. There was a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago, my sister-in-law sent me a picture of the Santa Cruz Warriors at San Jose Airport. And this was when they had a bunch of the siblings of current NBA players. So that was the Seth Curry, DeMarcus Cousins' brother, I don't remember his name, and Klay Thompson's brother. So it was like this really weird image of the Santa Cruz Warriors as like the bizarro Golden State Warriors, because it was a lot of the same dudes, or at least like the siblings. But anyway, so I'm on this tram coming from one of the terminals in Southwest or in Sacramento back to baggage claim, and I'm surrounded by these giant basketball players. I'm pretty sure these are the Stockton Kings. They're not like wearing gear or anything. And he is the most recognizable player out of them. So we end up standing like next to each other, holding like the pole in the tram. I look at him like, "Hey, what's up, man? You're Jeremy Lamb, right?" And he's like, dressed like an NBA player, looks like Russell Westbrook coming down the catwalk. His nails are painted. I'm like, this is not just some regular dude. And he looks at me dead in the eye and he goes, "No." I'm like, bro, I'm not asking you for a picture. I'm not like fanboying over you. I'm just like, "Hey, what's up, man? You're Jeremy Lamb, right?" Like, I thought we'd have like a very normal human interaction, which is usually how it goes, right? I don't know if you've run into celebrities or athletes in like a weird situation, but like, have you at any point?
I sold Debo Samuel a PS5.
Okay, and I'm sure he was very normal during the interaction, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's not like I interrupted his meal. He wasn't out with his girl like at a restaurant or like in the bathroom. People talk about that. Like people go up to athletes in the bathroom and ask them for a picture. I wasn't asking for Jeremy Lamb for a picture. I'm not that starstruck. I just said, "What's up, man? Are you Jeremy Lamb?" And he says, "No." And he kind of like laughs and looks at his teammates like
I mean, there's a reason the bro's on the Stockton Kings. That's what I would have said to him. I was like, "Bro, you're Jeremy Lamb on the Stockton Kings. Like, let's calm down. You're
man,
not."
like I'm not trying to disrespect the guy either. Like it was just like I'm pretty sure that's
You were
who
just
I
trying to
think
say
it
what's
is.
up. You were just trying to say what's up.
Very simple. He's also
Yeah.
known for dating the owner's daughter. I forget her name, Vivek's daughter, who was also the GM of the Stockton Kings at some point. So I think that had something to do with why he retired. Very messy. A lot of drama. I don't know if you've been following that story at all, but it was big here.
No, I'm
in
not. But
yeah,
it's gonna.
it
I'm
was.
sure it's gonna be a Netflix series sometime soon.
I'll send you some links after, but it got messy. A lot of people were talking about it on the Sacktown Sports Radio out here and stuff. So anyway, that was a very long story about a player that was not that good. But so again, I was picking for OKC with that in mind. So I picked Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, who I think would have fit OKC. He's a pretty good, maybe great defensive player, just never figured out how to shoot the ball from more than, I don't know, 8 feet out. So I think he would have made sense on this team. He's a lengthy, rangy, versatile defender. This was already a lengthy, rangy, versatile defensive team. I think he would have made a lot of sense. Maybe as a backup to Thabo Cephalosha. It's a tongue twister right there. But I think he would have made sense on OKC. He doesn't spread the floor or anything like that, but he does bring another level of athleticism and rim running and all that stuff. So what do you think? Did you have him in your top 14? I guess we'll find out. But
You'll find out. But man, MKG, I was a big fan when he was coming out. I was like, bro, this guy is gonna be amazing. He's athleticism off the charts. He's gonna crush the NBA, right? Didn't quite
Sean
happen.
Marion
Like
2.0 kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, yeah, he can't shoot, but bro, he can be Sean Marion at the least. He'll figure out his shot, and then like he does that little, Lonzo Ball kind of shooting motion. I'm like, God damn. And when I saw him shoot, I was like, man, maybe not. But I love MKG, and I think he could have been a difference maker for the Thunder when let's say he was still on the Thunder, and they're trying to stop Game 6 Clay right back in 2016. So that could have been a guy that could have stopped Game 6 Clay if he developed the way he was supposed to into an elite defender.
There you go.
I'm a big MKG fan, but I got clowned on by my boy. He'd be like, bro, MKG, what a bust. Like that's the only thing he has to hold over me is I was in on MKG and MKG was a bust. So
listen, nobody goes 100% on our takes, so we got to take the L's sometimes. But yeah, Jeremy Lamb, not a nice guy. If you ever see him, do not engage. All right. This player, I legitimately had to ask myself, who the hell is this? I did not remember him off top. The Phoenix Suns used the 13th overall pick on point guard Kendall Marshall out of North Carolina. A lot of repeats in this top 14. 2 guys from North Carolina, a couple guys from UConn. Anyway, drafted by the Suns. He is currently retired. So who did you have the Suns picking 13th here?
Yeah, I can't believe you didn't remember Kendall Marshall, man. He was killing it his rookie year, but after that he was no bueno. I mean, he also looked like by the time he was like his second or third year in the league, he looked like he was ready to retire. Like he looked like he was like 40 years old by the time he's like 3 years into the league. Anyways, I went Jeremy Lamb here. Slim pickings here. I think Phoenix could have used someone who could be a kind of scorer. I think they tried to sign Eric Gordon this offseason too, and then like he was a restricted free agent, so the Hornets matched, things like that. So they were looking for a guy who could score, and I guess Jeremy Lamb can do that. He's like a 10-point per game for his career, he just didn't have the right situations. Maybe he doesn't have the right personality. Maybe to fit into NBA. Maybe that's it too. So I don't know. Yeah, I think just less pressure on the guy. Maybe he turns out to be a decent scorer here for the Suns and a future starter.
I think this is only the second time we agree or we aligned. I also had them picking Jeremy Lamb. He ended up playing in the league for 10 years, which I did not think that he stuck around for that long. So credit to him. He was on 4 different teams. OKC, Stockton. Sorry, not Stockton. Well, Stockton too. Sacramento, Indy, and Charlotte. So 4 teams, 10 years. Not bad. Yeah, he did. There was like the best version of Jeremy Lamb was a dead-eye shooter. I remember him hitting very vividly remember him hitting like a 3/4 court game winner. So when he was on, he was a great shooter. I think his career, so I had to look it up, his career 3-point percentage is only 34%, but I feel like he was capable of 40%, and he actually did shoot 40% in 2020 with the Pacers. So the best version of him is probably a, top 30, top 40 player in the NBA, maybe something like that. Yeah, slim pickings here, but I do think he did have a better career than Kendall Marshall, and he did stick around longer. Maybe it was a personality thing that kept him from being a really good player versus a solid journeyman that stuck around for 10 years. All right, the last pick of the lottery, John Henson out of North Carolina. This is the third guy from the Tar Heels to go in the top 14 here after Harrison Barnes and Kendall Marshall. He's drafted by the Milwaukee Bucks, and he is currently retired. I really like this guy for some reason. I always thought I don't know what it was, something about him, but I liked him as a player. Never quite fulfilled his promise, but anyway, who did you have the Bucks taking 14th?
Yeah, this is where I went Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. Again, like we talked about, right? He's a physical freak, super athletic, just couldn't figure out how to shoot. And I thought he could have had a career trajectory like Draymond did, but I think he had to be surrounded by the right people. So I think here, in Milwaukee, they probably turn his focus towards the defense, hey, become this kind of elite defender. Maybe he pans out more like a Tony Allen type, right? Tony Allen, elite defender, just couldn't shoot for his life of him. You saw what the Warriors, the Warriors basically ran Tony Allen out of the league. Maybe that happens to MKG still too. But he was still playing. I think actually what forced him into retirement, he had some sort of heart condition or something like that. So I think
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he had something. He was a super weird story, and he sues the team or something weird happened with him. But yeah, I think he could have been an elite defender out of all of this, and so I think that's still worth a lottery pick to me. And I think the Bucks rolled the dice on him, and then pair him with a guy like Giannis. Maybe you're not a lot of shooting, but maybe you could be shutting some teams down.
So I went back and I looked at this 2012 Bucks team. It was a very strange team. I mean, leading the team in minutes, Monte Ellis, Brandon Jennings, JJ Redick, Ersan Ilyasova, Larry Sanders, Luke Mbah Mute. Oh, and Mike Dunleavy, current GM for the Warriors. They go 38-44. I believe they make the playoffs, which was very strange, but finished third in the division. They did not make the playoffs. Oh, they did make the playoffs, and they got swept by the Heat. So a very strange team. And I added a little bit of strangeness to them. I picked Dion Waiters. I thought he made sense as another combo guard coming off the bench. They probably would have preferred somebody with a little bit of size, but I'm just looking up and down this roster, and it's a bunch of guys that are not very good NBA players, but guys that I just loved. Love Monte, loved Ilyasova. I've made that very clear in our multiple redrafts and pods that for some reason, just one of those just guys that I really liked watching. Always led the league in charges taken and all that stuff. But yeah, throw Dion Waiters in this mix. Let's get really weird. Let's have a backcourt. Just imagine a backcourt of Monte and Dion, or Brandon Jennings and Dion Waiters. I thought about Austin Rivers here. Oof. It would have been fun, right? It would have been just a little chaotic.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and throw Larry Sanders in the mix. He was kind of, he was a good player, but he was also kind of a head case a bit. But yeah, I think
he was a great player.
He was a good player. I think he just had some issues with mental health issues, right? I think eventually, and he just took himself out of that situation. But he was really good. I think that's one of the reasons they actually end up making the playoffs that year, right? And I don't know why they draft John Henson with Larry Sanders there, but he starts getting into trouble, and then Brendan Jennings never liked his game. It would have been a really weird team and like how they score. They just have scores and they have nothing else. And like Larry Sanders is like the main defender, and that was it. Like they're like Larry Sanders, zone one middle. That's it. That's what you got to do. Like that's
And
what
I
they were
mean,
playing.
yeah. And speaking of Larry Sanders, he was actually a seventh in the Defensive Player of the Year voting that year. So I'm looking at his basketball reference page. Um, I remember there was a point where he was going to make a comeback. I think after the 2016 or 17 season, there was rumors about the Warriors taking a chance on him and didn't end up working out. But just yeah, one of those guys that like had all the physical tools, but just did not have the mental capacity, capability. I don't know what word you want to use to like handle the rigors of being a professional athlete and being an NBA athlete. Um, I want to say he smoked a lot of weed, but I don't think they test for weed in the NBA. Do you know if they do?
I don't. Maybe selectively. Maybe selectively test.
I feel like I looked it up a few years ago. It's like, does the NBA drug test for weed? And it says they do, but I don't remember anyone ever getting suspended for it. I want to say Tyreek Evans or OJ Mayo, one of those two guys got suspended for doing cocaine, but the NBA has like a weird history
Yeah.
with cocaine.
Yeah,
and, yeah.
I think it was OJ Mayo and Tyree got caught both cocaine, but like
Yeah.
they never. I don't think maybe they test for it, but like, come on, let's be real. I'm pretty sure 90% of the NBA is smoking weed. Like, let's be
Yeah,
real.
I mean, Kevin Durant always talks about how he smokes. He looks high as shit in a bunch of interviews that he does, usually in the off season. And it's legal in, I don't know, half the states in the country. It's a waste of time if they do. But we've digressed quite a bit here. Yeah, Dion Waiters, let's get weird. Again, I thought about Austin Rivers. Did you think about any of the undrafted guys? I think the two best undrafted guys were Kent Bazemore, solid journeyman career, and JaMychal Green, another guy who had a pretty decent journeyman career. But did you think about any of those other guys?
Yeah, that was it. Those are the two guys, Austin Rivers, and then maybe Festus Ezeli. That was about it. Those are the honorable mentions for me, I think. Yeah. Kent Bazemore, like, man, the career he had from undrafted to getting paid millions of dollars by the Atlanta Hawks. I mean, he made some money for himself. Solid career, nothing special, but like solid starter. On the Hawks and wherever else. I think he bounced around after the Hawks a bit. And then JaMychal Green, another guy, solid role player, starter. Festus Ezeli. I think if Festus Ezeli didn't have that knee problem, he's probably higher up on, like, he's probably a lottery pick. Because he was showing that potential for sure.
Yeah, I'll never forgive him for that foul on LeBron up 3 in the they're probably up 4, but yeah, the foul on LeBron in Game 7 of the 2016 NBA Finals. Nice guy, but there was another name that kept popping up in like the box score plus minus, the value over replacement player, win shares plus 48, and that was Kyle O'Quinn. Did you think about him at all?
Yeah. I was like, I'm surprised he's popping up in these advanced metrics, but like when you look at his career metrics, like he barely scores 6 points, barely has 5 rebounds. I'm like, why is he popping up? And then he's probably on some really good teams. That's probably why he's popping up on some of these advanced metrics.
But he wasn't. I mean, he was on the Philly for a little bit. He just looked like a Philly Ock with his beard and the bald head. And he was on the Knicks for a while.
That's right. Yeah, it's weird to see him pop up. Like I was like legit surprised that on his like win shares he was like pretty like decently high in this draft. Like and on his like warp he was decently high in this draft. I'm like, what is Kyle Quinn doing here? I looked at him and I was like, should I put him in here? But then I'm like looking at his career numbers. I'm like, it doesn't make sense. Like I guess he's just a statistical anomaly, I guess.
He's one of my favorite like genre of role players where it's like he's that tweener big man that has no real offensive game but gets rebounds, plays hard defense. These guys are, dime a dozen. You think about, even in this draft, you think about like him, Quincy AC, a couple other guys that just, they don't have much of a skill set, but the fact that they just try really hard is enough of a skill set to succeed in the NBA, where they can stick around long enough and end up playing in the NBA for 8-10 years or whatever it is. So yeah, it was very strange seeing him up there, and he didn't make the cut for me, but I thought about him for a little while. Same with like JaMychal Green, same thing, like same idea of hustle guy that can make a difference on a good team, but isn't going to do much on a bad team.
Exactly. All right, and that's what most of those guys are in this draft.
Yeah, this was when I texted you about it, what came to mind was Anthony Davis, Draymond, Dame Lillard. They were just top of mind for whatever reason. I was like, let's do 2012, and then once we committed to it, I was like, oh, this is a dog shit draft after the top 4 or 5, but it made it a little more fun because we disagreed quite a bit on a lot of our picks. So let us know what you guys think. I know this is not the best draft, but some intrigue, I think, at the top of who you guys would have picked, Dame or Draymond or Harrison Barnes or Andre Drummond, and what they would have looked like on their different teams. Hope you guys enjoyed this. That's it for us. Please make sure to follow, like, and subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast, especially if you're following on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you guys later. Thanks, man. Thanks, Lamont.